Hey folks, I hope you're all well. This video is going to be the Fatescribe Roh-Kalo fight, Mythic POV with a little bit of, self-analysis and self-criticism as we go forward. Because as I said, the log for this fight wasn't particularly great. There's a lot of places I could improve, but I do also have to respect that a fair amount of this is also RNG reliant, in that I may have been affected by a lot of runes, or could be affected by even more runes the next time I do this. So without any further delay, let's get into it. You will notice that my recording screen for this is slightly larger. I've taken this directly off Twitch, so I'm also hiding things like my sub goal and stuff like that, just to make this easier and more pleasant for your eyes. Unfortunately, that does mean you need to put up with my mug. So not a whole hell of a lot to talk about. We're just, for this first 16 seconds, this was pretty much the last pull of the night. So we were kind of all winding down. And the guild did the infamous last pull of the night, let's go. So I'm using IQD for this. Getting up to 5 holy power. And then using IQD, which gave me haste. Now, something I did find out, because of where my stats are placed currently, IQD actually falls out of favor. My stats are so evenly balanced in my raid gear that at any point IQD could give me like 3 different stats, which is never great. And it devalues IQD quite a lot. So I need to be looking for a different trinket to use. I'm currently using the PvP 1 minute one, but that is 226 item level. And ideally, I would like to try and acquire an overwhelming power crystal. So that is on the agenda for this week. With it being a fortified week, hopefully that means DOS is a little bit more manageable. We do have a Demon Hunter tank, so we have access to chains, which is quite nice. One thing I did discover due to our group's overall DPS, cooldowns weren't really lining up so well, so I could have arguably forced or squeezed in a final reckoning there, but because this fight's all about when you want to transition with certain timings, it means that I am actually sitting and holding over the course of the fight. And here we try to bop everything in, or boop everything in with a ring apiece, and then I go into a final reckoning. And I put an execution sentence on Fatescribe Roh-Kalo. Problem with doing that is obviously we then transition, because our group DPS was very, very high, which kind of made mine suffer a little bit, but what can you do? Mechanic here with the casts and the weak auras saying that I'm too close, you kind of have to dance it in and out. Now, this is something that takes a lot of getting used to, and something I'm still not great with. As you can see there, I end up walking over the anima looking orb, and as a result take a considerable amount of damage, which I really shouldn't have taken. I should have just ran towards the ranged, but I tried to keep uptime on these monstrosities because they need to die as quickly as you can. You can see here that I go round this pillar. Now that's a line of sight point, so you can avoid the AoE casts with minimal movement. The problem is that does mean that your gap is very, very tight when the orb comes round that you have to dodge, which is what I got hit by. Not too much to say going into this. Pretty much the intermission ends around the 2-minute mark, so I get to go into a second pair of wings. And this is a reason why I'm looking at trying to remove IQD as well, because IQD is now off cooldown, but I don't really have anything to use it with. I've got another 30 odd seconds on my 1 minute, which is a prime example of what the guild's DPS kind of results in when you have to hold your DPS. So over the course of this fight, I could have gotten in maybe 1, possibly even 2 1 minute windows. I think I could have probably fit in 1 over the course of the fight, because I don't think there's any point I actually hold wings, but that still causes fair amount of desync. And given how our 1 minute bursts work, that's quite a lot of damage for us. Especially in an AoE situation where like these ads are being taken care of. You will see that I occasionally Hand of Hindrance it, and that's because a slow is called for, and I immediately target it and snare it. We do have mages, warlocks, and other classes that can slow, but end of the day, Hand of Hindrance is a global. And I'm pretty much swapping to it anyway at that point, and so might as well use Paladin utility. Hey. Now, this is an interesting thing. We're going into the second intermission, we are being asked to hold, because we're basically waiting for cooldowns to come back. So you can see that like my wings has come back. I've got 30 seconds until my final reckoning comes back. Again, another moment of desync. And we're just kind of holding. Once we get to a certain point, once you get to the 6 minute mark, then, well, you're looking at getting into the third phase at the 6 minute mark. This enables people with 3 minute cooldowns to have their cooldowns back up again, because once this intermission is over, we are going to go into Bloodlust. So you end up in this position where, for the likes of the Boomies and the Warlocks, you want to hold. So at 5:30, which is when we then force the transition 40%, that then gives us about 30 seconds to sort out all the runes. And you can see this weak aura that I have here that marks which ring you have allocated and also tells you who the backups are. So both our monks, Sober Council, our Paladin, and Diablo are our stand-ins, which is nice. And if it's targeted on you, which I believe it is in the third phase, you will see that I end up with a huge icon in the middle of my screen. And I will link that weak aura below. Or a weak aura similar to it anyway, because I believe that the weak aura I'm using actually got played with and altered slightly by 2 members of my guild, Stinth and Sober Council, because they're pretty good with weak auras. So you can see that we've gone into the third phase, and this is Bloodlust. Now, depending on where your DPS sits, you can actually ignore this. Here you go. You can see that I've been targeted, and I'm following my ring round because I need to get there. And you can see that I'm labeled green, and the icon comes up here, green 4. So I'm the 4th ring out, labeled green, and I just need to carry it around. Now, the interesting mythic mechanic is you have this beam. This beam does damage, so you don't want to dodge right, because you can actually be damaged by your own beam. But that's fine. I use a health pot, and thankfully, orange moves out of the way for me, so I don't get clapped, and I make it just in time. Small paladin legs. Now, going clockwise like I did there is a good example of the fact that it doesn't matter where you are, if you get onto these rings quick enough, like almost instantly, you can get it to where it needs to be in time, regardless. Obviously, and the reason for that is because of the mythic mechanic. The fact that when you stand on the runes, there's that beam does damage when it passes through people. So what you don't want to do is go anti-clockwise and run it through everybody else if they're trying to go clockwise. There's rumours that you can jump it, but none of us were willing to test it on progression. We might on farm, and I might re-comment at the end of this when I find out, if I find out, but And yeah, that's pretty much the fight. It's fairly straightforward. The main kicker and the main 2 abilities that do cause a problem are those runes that you saw in the third phase, and getting them into their allocated location in time, but also a second mechanic throughout the phase where you actually, we'll go back to it and I'll see if I can find it. Diviner's Probe, bombs, no. Add incoming beams, Twist Fate. Is it Twist Fate? Might be Twist Fate. Wait for it to come in. Twist Fate, and here come the runes. Right. Right, here. Grim Portent is what it's called. And you have these black, you see these various runes on the screen are highlighted. Now, if you get targeted with Grim Portent, you will have an allocated rune. And that allocated rune will have this huge black orb above it. And that's the rune you run to. You have plenty of time to get there, so you don't need to panic. Like, you can get to anywhere on it just by pressing W, but you need to go immediately if you're doing that. And to be honest, given the fact that if someone doesn't stand in the rune, it's an immediate or one-shot, I'd recommend just not bothering with your cast, not doing anything, and just get over there. You can get over there, and as a paladin, you can throw out a wog on people or a flash of light, and you can use a little bit of your utility to just help people if they're out of range of healers. And this is kind of Fatescribe Roh-Kalo in a nutshell. There's three mechanics that are just, if you don't do it right, you get one shot. But outside of those three mechanics, the fight is really manageable and really simple. And not that different from Heroic. So, all in all, personally, for me, my improvements going forward would be potentially don't hold Final Reckoning and my 1 minute for anything. Just use them on cooldown. If I hit stuff, I hit stuff. If I just hit the boss, then I just hit the boss. But again, having to be wary of where timings sit and if calls are made to stop DPS, which they were on multiple occasions, like going into the second intermission, prime example. Like, you didn't want to, like, I didn't even want to look at the boss. I was there just burning my mana bark, just pressing and casting Flash of Light. Not the most effective way to help healing, but it was something to do and to stop me from turning around and deciding, you know what, I'm just going to judge the boss. And the other parts of it, possibly the uptime with the rune, if I wasn't targeted in the last phase, that would have been quite nice. But the other bits and pieces I have is more managing my personal movement, my uptime, and generally improving my sense of awareness. So, like the first intermission when we had the 2 ads and I got clapped by the orb on the floor, dealing increased damage, trying to get round that pillar. Had I have just waited, ran to the range, let that orb come past slightly, and then gone to the pillar, we'd have been fine, because then I could have played hokey cokey with the spellcasts there and not had to worry about it. But anyway, this was the Fatescribe Mythic kill. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and you've learned something, and when we get KT down, I will do the same then as well. But obviously KT will be a little bit more biased than one-sided because I'll only be able to do what I did, whether it be go up, like staying up and dealing with the ads, or killing the phylacteries. So until the next time, folks, take care and have a good one.